One of the challenges of my life, I think I might have mentioned to you, it's okay if you don't remember, a little more than a year ago, I got hit by a car and had a traumatic brain injury. And my memory before the accident, because I'm such a visual thinker and stuff like that, was like exceptionally good. Even though I have auditory processing, if I have understood prior to the accident, I would remember conversations word for word, which was great for me, not always loved by all. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that skill.
Since the accident, neither do I. And not only do I not have that skill, but I lose as though it never happened many things. So I'm having to learn a whole new way of being. And without too much going into my past, because we have other things to do today, not being able to remember is super triggering for me. A lot of gaslighting in the past. You are frozen. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Yeah, I was just switching
yeah.
to a different antenna.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. One that I find my gratitude for it in my ability to relate to a whole new part of the public, right?
Yeah.
I'm always grateful when I might be able to show relationship. But I wouldn't wish this on anybody. It's
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I forget stuff, and you're more than welcome to remind me of stuff, and I won't take it badly.
Same. I don't know. My brain's a mess. We joke about my memory in this house. Yeah. So yeah, you may have to remind me of things too from time to time, and I won't be offended either. So yeah,
That's
I
wonderful.
think that the nice thing about like in neurodiversity like circles, we're really open about those kinds of things with each other. We can be really honest, like, hey, this is not personal. Like, I'm just a scatterbrain sometimes. I can't help it. My brain decides not to hang on to information and randomly says, no, thanks, that's just not going to stick. And it's like, it might have been really important and it doesn't matter, unfortunately,
Yeah, I do. So I am really excited to get right into this. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, let's get into it.
I stim in some interesting ways. And when I'm on camera, I have to remember that some of my stimming, I realized I had like my finger stuck down in between my breasts. Okay, that's not a camera appropriate.
I've probably totally done that too. The nice thing is but if you're like low enough on the camera, like a lot of the stims you're doing, like people have no idea. Like, like no one has any idea like how I'm sitting like all crisscross in my little toes or like just like wiggling and bouncing the whole time. It's like I look like I'm somewhat still, like
yeah, but
from
no.
No, not at all.
Yeah, exactly. Those are some of the things I want to talk about. The whole basically one of the foundational points of my YouTube channel is to show up real.
Okay, yeah.
And talk about all the stuff from that standpoint. If the world actually was designed for us, how and who would we be? Right? So that's what I want the YouTube channel to be. I don't want it to look like other quote unquote professional things because we don't fit in that world. And
yeah, exactly.
I mean, your whole book, I now have 20 copies in my house. I'm so happy.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Well, I think I told you I bought,
Yeah.
I'm doing a training day after tomorrow and I want everybody to get a copy.
Yeah.
So,
and I hope, I priced it so cheap that hopefully organizations and things don't sneeze at that price. Or if people want to use it with their trainings, it's like a really cheap add-in they can throw in there,
I agree. And let's try to remember to mention that as well. Like,
yeah, because when I compared some of the other like organizational neurodiversity books, I didn't read them, but I was looking at their prices, and they were like twice the price of my book a lot of times. And I was just like, I know it's probably worth it, but you know, why? It's very
Yeah,
expensive.
and anything that was originally written with an academic audience in mind is priced way out of reach of anybody. Why do they do that to students? Like, well, I don't. So there's a wonderful woman, Sheena Mason, I think. Anyways, if you've ever heard of the theory of racelessness, that's Sheena's thing. And
Oh, interesting.
her first book, it was decided to publish it as a textbook. So it's $100 frickin' bucks. Like, why are you doing that to
Oh
students?
yeah.
So she's literally now finishing up a revision that can be sold to the general public. And yeah, it's going to be written with a little bit less academic speak and stuff like that. So, you know, there will be people who appreciate that. But still,
Oh yeah.
why? Why is it $100?
Yeah, yeah. That's a lot.
That's a
I
lot.
mean, it depends. Yeah, and it's like I really wanted it to be. Didn't want cost to be an obstacle. It's a workplace book, but it's also applicable in so many scenarios, not just so I wanted it to be like just everybody, general people could just pick it up and
Yeah.
afford it. You know, like that was really
Yeah.
important to me. The cost wouldn't prohibit people from having the knowledge. I hate like that's the thing, like for so many neurodivergent people and just people who are low income in general, money is an obstacle to education, and less so now in the age of the internet, which I'm really grateful for, like because so much things are either low price to take classes online or free. You know, you can learn about
Right.
almost anything for free, which is great. But like so many neurodivergent people have been like kept out of academia, like because it is cost prohibitive and it's like
Right.
kept away from learning things. And I just think about like one of the big things I can't stop thinking about is how many neurodivergent people could probably be like really successful in all of these different fields because a lot of us are specialists, but because like money is the obstacle, we can't like either learn what we need to learn or access the tools like the photography equipment or the paints or you know like whatever it is to like become whatever we could be so fabulous at, because so many of us are broke, like we don't have the opportunity, we're just too busy surviving to like really thrive. And like this is like it's the things that I think about when I'm trying to fall asleep at night that it's like, you know, haunts me. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And the reason why I hit the record button so early is because exactly what's happening to us right now happens all the time. Like we start talking about interesting things before we officially start,
Yeah.
and then I can't cut it out. So I'm going to say hello quick so people will know who we are if they come upon this video, because I think like either we'll snippet that out and send it out in the universe on its own, or we're going to include it because we need to talk about that. We need to talk about all this stuff. So I'm Dawn Marie Solis. I have Neuro Awesome Life and EQ Solutions and this little YouTube channel. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know I fangirl. I get very, oh, I love people so much. And Rivera, who many of you may know as NeuroDivergent Rebel, favorite social handle, by the way, has agreed to talk to me. And so I'm a little bit like, Lyric's talking to me. So
It's gonna be fun.
But we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but mostly Lyric's book that came out recently and everybody needs to read. Workplace Neurodiversity Rising. Neurodiversity equals all brains, neurodivergent and neurotypical working together and supporting each other, and other stuff that it says on the cover. And I'm just really, really excited. This was a great book and we'll dig into it. But I want to start, Lyric, I'm going to give you a minute to speak in a second. Welcome to my neurodivergence.
Thank you.
So, you know, the box of 20 came in because yes, I did buy 20 of these books because I'm giving them away at a training because I think everybody needs to have this book. But I opened it up and my 22-year-old was nearby. I'm like, come look, you know, NeuroDivergent Rebel. She's like, yeah, I do, you know, all excited. And I said, this is her book. And then she picked it up and she said, oh, wow, I really like the cover. It makes me want to read the book. And I agree. Your cover is awesome. I love it. And she
Thank
mentioned it
you.
again today because I mentioned I was going to be like, it's happening today, right? And she's like, yeah, it just makes me want to read it. If I went into the store and I was like looking for that book, that would be the one I'd pull off the shelf. It just calls to me. It makes me want to read it. It looks interesting. And the cover doesn't lie. It's a really good personal and informational, like useful, and like, I don't know, you did such a great job balancing weaving your experiences in with what people need to know about working with neurodivergent folks out there in the world. So Lyric, I'm going to work really hard to stop talking and let you say a few things. Can you, not everybody's going to know who you are, so can you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Lyric, pronouns they, them. I am an autistic, non-binary, multiply neurodivergent writer, author, educator, and speaker. And so this book, Workplace Neurodiversity Rising, is based on my experience as a late discovered neurodivergent person, since being in the workplace since I was 11, starting in the family business, and then all the way up to now I'm self-employed. But the last time I was employed by someone else, I was VP of marketing and working to launch a neurodiversity initiative in someone else's company, and then COVID happened. And so now I'm on my own doing the neurodivergent rebel thing and nothing else, and trying to help organizations like make some of the changes that really led to my diagnosis of finding out I was autistic when I was almost 30, because I encountered a workplace system that was just so not inclusive and unwilling to flex. And similar to as when I was a child, as an autistic, undiagnosed kid, ADHD autistic kid, I was framed as I was the problem. I was the problem. I couldn't sit still. I was too disruptive. I wasn't learning the way everyone else learned. Instead of like flexing these systems, it was like I need to fit myself into these systems. And so that was something that really traumatized me in the school system as a kid. And then for most of my work career, I'd done really well working in either organizations or career paths that were really well tailored to all of my neurodivergent autistic strengths, and avoided all my weaknesses like the plague. So it's like, no weaknesses. I only do what I'm good at. And so it gave this like impression of me to other people that I was really, really, really skilled, because nobody ever saw me trying to do something that was one of my weaknesses. And then in this organization here, it was like they expected me to, the job description shifted, and we moved into a new office, and so the sensory environment shifted, and I got really, really sick. And I was basically kind of begging them to let us do some changes, and I couldn't get any changes made. And so then I went and got, I was going to try to figure out what's going on with my health, and I found out I was autistic, and I still couldn't get any changes made because it was like, oh, well, you must be high functioning, and there were all these misconceptions. And so that led me like into like a whole different path, into finding a workplace that was actually inclusive and didn't treat me like the problem, and had universal systems in place instead of these segregated systems. And I got to see like my dream for what an inclusive workplace really is, because neurodiversity, it's not just about the neurodivergent brains, it's about all of the brains, and the beauty that diversity together is like really harmonious. Because like in the workplace that wasn't inclusive, for example, something I struggle with being autistic, ADHD, and hyperlexic is my brain compiles the data so fast when I'm reading, like I'm reading paragraphs at a time, and it corrects the typos. I don't even see them. And so I'm a terrible proofreader. I am a terrible proofreader. And it doesn't matter how if I try to read slower or anything else, I just don't see the typos. I even like tried to take classes, and it's like, and this was a really big problem for my non-inclusive employer, because they felt like this was simple and like you should be able to do this, and it was career limiting that I wouldn't see typos from time to time. And it was like, it didn't matter if it was like a major external facing document or like a casual internal chat or an email. Like it was like on my performance reviews, you had a typo in this internal email to, you know, it was like, I was so like afraid to even hit send on an email or a chat. I would sit there like reading things over and over and over again. And if I could retract something, I would send it back. And it was like, it really impacted my mental health because it was this thing I really had no control over without having some support in place. And so like flash forward to the inclusive workplace where it wasn't a problem that I had this weakness that most people didn't have because everyone else, like most people in the team could do what I was struggling with. So we put a universal policy in place where it was like, everyone gets Grammarly, first of all, everybody, you know, which was really helpful for me to catch some of those typos. But then at the same time, it was a rule company wide, not just singling me or anyone else out, that we had 2 proofreaders that were love proofreading, really good at proofreading. It was what their skill was. And so anytime anything was important and needed like a second set of eyes, it had to go through 2 eyes. It was just standard procedure. And one of them had to be one of our final proofreader people. And so it was like, I didn't have to be singled out. It was like a universal policy. And I saw like, this is really working. And it didn't cost the company that much. And as a company, like what we did, instead of, you know, trying to make everybody eliminate all their weaknesses, which isn't realistic because humans have weaknesses, was putting people into roles they enjoyed and had skills at, and hiring for roles that like people in the team didn't have those skills at. So it was like, hey, we need somebody who loves this thing that we all hate doing or none of us are good at. And so we'd find somebody who has those skills. And so it was literally like this neurodiversity in action approach. And then COVID hit, and I ended up, you know, on my own because we had to downsize. And so I started doing the neurodiversity initiative on my own, trying to teach other organizations how to do the same thing. And then it all got put into the book. And so that's why it's, as you mentioned, a combination of story weaved in and out with the like the things I'm actually teaching, is because that's how I teach when I give presentations in organizations. I lay out like the teaching points, but also I know, being that little autistic ADHD kid learning in school, how painful, boring teachers are, and how like my brain couldn't latch onto it. So it's like, if a teacher is funny and telling stories and is compelling, even if they're sneaking the facts in there, it's like that spoonful of sugar helps medicine go down kind of thing, which is going to be stuck in my head the rest of the day now. But it's like, so that's how I teach when I work with organizations. I sprinkle in stories to teach and illustrate the points. And so the book, I figured, should be the same. And that way it would also be really simple, accessible language that hopefully anyone could digest, you know, like you were not overly heavy and academic, but still, you know, I think academic level people can appreciate it.
Oh, I agree. And I think that's an interesting thing that's happening within business and academia, is that we're finally starting to get to the point where the classism of education is waning. You know, I love a rich vocabulary. I do. I don't enjoy not understanding what somebody's saying. And so if you're going to speak to me about things that I don't really know much about, if you're going to use the vocabulary, the vernacular, at least let me know what it means. Don't ask me to suss out the meanings from context. I'm fairly good at that. I don't always get it right, but I like those details. I like the nuance of language and things like that. And so I'm very similar to Lyric when I do, when I write, when I do corporate trainings, when I do my coaching. It's infused with my story, in part because I'm a relationship person. The way I understand things is in relationship. So an example of something, a simile, you know, a way of saying, oh, this is like this, and this is how this relates. Now I get it. So my story is part of how I do it. But I have found, because I've been doing some version of the work I'm doing now for almost 30 years, not everybody enjoys the personal story. Some people really want, like, could you please just give me the facts? It does not need to be the Dawn Marie show, right? Or people think I'm telling my story out of ego, right? And so I've learned how to briefly let folks know I'm going to use my story as some of my examples for a couple of reasons. One, it's the way I understand things. But two, because I don't feel comfortable telling other people's stories. And that bleeds over into some of the ways I could present facts. I'm also dyscalculic. So like, I don't remember numbers well. I don't, so like that statistics and stuff like that, my brain breaks. I remember the story. So I teach the way I'm able, but
Yeah.
it is interesting that not every, like, I think a lot of people do enjoy the humor rich, the story rich presentation. It is found more engaging, interesting, and easier to learn. And then I think, and I'm starting to believe they're probably neurodivergent people, very likely autistic. They have a rule in their mind that they're there to learn the facts of the thing. All other things are irrelevant. Please stop wasting my time. And how do I value that human being too, right? And I think that's one of the things that you did well in your book, is helping folks to understand that neurodiversity, yes, there are those of us who are neurodivergent, but neurodiversity is the reality of life. Everybody has their own unique brain, their own unique way of processing, and their own needs in that space. And how do we work together, recognizing and valuing everybody? Because I
Yes.
think there's situations, and this is something I wanted to ask you specifically. There are situations, I'm also late diagnosed, or self-discovered, I'll put it that way. When I started recognizing so many of my clients were neurodivergent, I started doing more research and got a significantly better education, very enlightening, shocking education about what I didn't know and how wrong I was. And I discovered myself, and changed a lot about the way I perceived myself and the way I understood my adult children and all of that kind of stuff. And as much as it was, for me, one of the most beautiful, edifying, thrilling discoveries, it also came with a lot of complicated emotions and was tied to a lifetime of trauma. And some of my early energy sharing with people, I've realized I'm autistic, I've realized I'm ADHD, I'm learning about this thing called dyscalculia. And the reason I bump into all the doorways is because I'm dyspraxic, right? Like, I got a reason for everything. But oh my goodness, was I a lot for a while. I wasn't just info dumping, I was trauma dumping in the guise of info dumping. And I think that happens, and sometimes it does in the workplace, where somebody has discovered their identity, it's putting a lot of the puzzle pieces in place, but there's nobody there to help guide them through the process of recognition, or experience-based becoming, if that makes sense. And without that guidance, I think we can forget that, yes, it's absolutely, we have to start speaking up for ourselves. We have to start unmasking. We need to do all of these things in order to be healthy and well in ourselves. But we can't take a wrecking ball to everyone else while we do it. What's that balance look like for you? How do you explain to the neurodivergent folks that you are right? Ask for the accommodations, stand up for yourself. You are right. But other people get to have their way of being at the same time without it damaging you. How do you help companies figure that out?
Well, yeah. So with, with organizations, like when you go to like the HR people, like for example, like when I first was starting to come out, like I didn't know how to do it. Like I first, when I was autistic, and I was like, okay, I know I need help. I know I'm not well. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. I like expected I could be like, hey, I'm autistic, so I need, this and that, and I expected to get no pushback. I thought it was gonna be so easy, but people don't understand what autism is in the workplace, right? Like, and like people, like even my HR people and people reporting to me, my managers weren't willing to go do research and figure out what autism was. They had like these preconceived ideas that fit children that I wasn't. And so it was like, oh, you must be very high functioning, or you didn't need, you didn't have this before in the first 2 years you were here, which was when we were in a different office. I had a different role and I was only coming in once or twice a week. So like I didn't need accommodations because it was okay, that they changed the job description and they changed the physical space. And so they changed my schedule. And so then I fell apart. And so it's like, but, because everyone else wouldn't have had a problem with it, everyone else was okay, or nobody else is complaining. Like those things were used to say, like, you should be fine, everyone else is fine. And so, one of the first things I have to do with organizations when I come in is really, I'm trying to reach the leaders and the HR people and the people who are custodians of people within the organization, who like are like, as leaders, you should be a leader. You're not there to be a dictator. You're there to take care of the people who like work under you. Like you should be I believe in servant leadership. And so you're there to like work for your employees, not like have them work for you, but there's a way people are sometimes backwards in businesses. And so it's like we got to get those people who are leaders, and also the neurodivergent people in the organization who maybe haven't admitted they're neurodivergent, or maybe don't know, because like, it's like I was almost 30 when I figured it out. And like I've met people who are like in their 40s, 50s, 60s,
Yeah,
70s,
50.
beyond.
I was 50.
Yeah. So people are people, especially like in their 30s and up, like they weren't checking and screening when we were kids. So like we were kind of just like left out if you're like my age and older. So unless you come across other neurodivergent people, you're probably not going to figure it out. Or unless you have some kind of health crisis or mental health crisis where uh, someone like really answer questions with someone looking at your mental health, like you probably will never find out. Or if you come to one of my presentations, you might find out and start making some connections, which is kind of the point. Is we need the neurodivergent people in the organization to start talking and expressing what works and what doesn't work for them first. Also, we need leaders and everyone in the organization to realize that there are all of these different ways of thinking, and that none of them are wrong, and that, like one person's idea of like sensory bliss or the perfect environment to work in could be torture for the next person, or that even one person situationally, like even a neurotypical person, we'll say neurotypical if that's even a real thing. So
Yeah,
even
I
the
don't think it is,
neurotypical
but
person,
yeah.
air quotes, I've got some theories that I can't put into words yet. But like, take that person, and like they love this open chaos busy office most of the time. But what about when they're trying to learn something new, they're on a deadline, or they're just like kind of stressed out that day and they need to be left alone? Then they're going to want to go work in a quiet space too. So the needs of people flex from day to day. And so I need the organizations first to have the understanding that we've always done it this way, or everybody's fine with it, why are you complaining? It like we got to be willing to flex that, and be willing to meet people where they are, and say, if someone says, hey, this is what I need, whatever this is, to be the best version of myself, or to be more efficient, or to work better, or for, so if I'm not going to have seizures because your lights are making me sick, I need, it's not going to be a problem, especially if it costs nothing, because a lot of the things aren't going to cost an organization anything to change. Most of the things neurodivergent people need are compassion and based, and don't cost hardly anything. So a lot of us, it's like, hey, let us use headphones in the office. I've got my own headphones, I don't need you to buy me any. Like, just allow me to have them while I'm working, and don't say no headphone policy. Or like let me work from home, or let people work from home when they need to, like as needed. Because some people, like being able to come into the office, for some ADHDers, they need that. even though like that would prevent me from being effective in most scenarios. Like some people need that structure. So it's like, let people tell you what they need and listen to them, so that they can like really be the best version of themselves. Because I think that's a big problem, is we're in that grace period when we first found out we're neurodivergent. And so we've got this new thing that explains so much of our like lives. And so it's like this big aha moment for us that we want to share with everyone. And most people aren't going to understand that because they see us the same way, right? Like we see ourselves in this totally new way. Oh my God, I'm autistic. Oh my God, I'm ADHD. Oh my God, everything makes sense. Oh, I want to tell everybody. But like, especially the people who are close to you, or like people you've been working with closely, family members, friends sometimes, who have known you your whole life and didn't see you as the neurodivergent person, and now you're like saying you're this whole new person to them. They're like cognitive dissonance. Like they can't understand because you're the same person you always were, which you are the same person you always were. Like that's not the point. And so there's a little bit of that confusion, I think, that happens sometimes. Also, something else I encountered is, as a neurodivergent person, I tend to be attracted to other neurodivergent people, like as friends and colleagues, and people that I get on with well are usually other neurodivergent people. Even before I knew I was neurodivergent, like the friends that I made like in childhood and my partner, like other neurodivergent people, because it's like there's something that kind of connects us together. And because of that, like I've got neurodivergent family members and things like that, but a lot of them are in this generation where they don't know they're neurodivergent. And so when I'm trying to share my experience, I get, you get pushback from undiscovered neurodivergent people, like, oh, everybody does that. It's like, no, you do that and you're neurodivergent, you don't know. So like, it's really hard, like to know how to do it. And so like, we need grace while we're practicing, like explaining this. And so I think it's something that like, I don't do as much coaching anymore. I used to do a lot more coaching, but I'm not really taking new coaching right now. But when I did a lot of coaching, something I realized was like when people were newly discovered, that was like their big struggle, is like first learning how to advocate for themselves. Like it's really hard. And my advice to those people is like they have to learn, like not necessarily like, oh, okay, you have this label, like which means a lot to you, but that label, other people don't understand what it means, and you don't have time to educate them on what that label means. It's too much. Autism means so many things to all these different people. ADHD means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Dyscalculia, all these different things. What matters is, okay, what does it mean to you as a person, right? You need to understand that. What does that mean to you? And what does that mean you need to be successful in life? And successful isn't just like money and finance. Successful is like, you're getting enough rest, you're happy, you're feeling healthy, like your mental health is going to be good, you're not going to be stressed out too much. Like, what are the things you need to be like recharging your batteries, and what's like to avoid that's not going to drain you till you feel so depleted that you're just miserable and drained all the time. Like, learn those things, and then learn like what you need and how to ask for what you need, and practice. And what also helps, unfortunately, in workplaces, because it's capitalism and it's just the systems they are, when you're asking for something in a workplace, a lot of times your organization wants to know what's in it for them. Like, so it's like, I need so and so, like I need this, like whatever this is, so that I can do this. I need blank so that I can be more effective at this, or so I can get this done faster, or so that I can, I need to go work from home so I can focus and not be interrupted for the next 4 hours. So I'm going to go work from home the rest of the day because I need to finish this and I have this deadline. So it's like, I need this. Why? How is it going to help? So the organization can like see clearly, like, this is the thing you need. You're not just saying it for some non-reason. Like, you have a reason, you have a purpose, and it's going to help you achieve the task better for the organization. Yeah, and it's unfortunate, like you have to kind of prove like why it helps the organization, but when organizations have more trust, you have to do a little bit less of that explaining why you need what you need, which is why trust is a big theme in my book, because it really just makes things easier for people to speak up and say, hey, this is what I need today. But like that, those would be, I think, really big advices. First, to the organization, because we put a lot of weight on the person, and often the system has some things that need to be fixed first. but then also, for the person too.
So thank you for all of that. It gave me lots and lots of other thoughts. One of which is when helping an organization find that sense of trust in their employees and find a mental and emotional flexibility for how the work is done. One of the things that I come across is, I believe, a challenge birthed from how diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts have been presented, in part by legally defining what must happen, in equally strict and nebulous ways, right? Like, what does reasonable mean, right? You have to provide reasonable accommodation. What does reasonable mean? So there's a lot that I think is confusing about inclusion and accommodation, but I also think that we're a society, at least here in the United States, where we're constantly checking the balanced scales of fairness, right? If I give it to you, I'll have to give it to everyone. What makes you special? Why? Which is part of why we have the Disability Rights Act and stuff like that, right? But we don't yet have a society that actually enjoys finding solutions. As a society, we don't actually enjoy the process of recognizing the challenge and finding the solution, at least in my opinion. We're very quick to throw something at a problem and hope the problem goes away instead of, and it's why I love universal design. And for anybody who's not familiar with universal design, my way of explaining it is, if you want to do a thing, create a thing, build a thing, you think about someone who might be really unable to participate in general, and you create, build, design for that person, but you do it in a way that includes everyone. A ramp into a building is a simple version of universal design because, yes, it was designed so that folks with ambulatory needs had access to buildings that only had stairs prior to that. But people who don't have ambulatory needs are equally able to use that way of ingress, right? We can all use the ramp. Yay. What tends to happen, and research is starting to bear this out, is that when we think universally in how we include, everybody benefits. So you were mentioning before, people have different sensory needs in order to be able to focus, in order to be able to learn, right? So for some people, they need the beat going, right? They need beat going, they need a little energy around, they need bright lights. I have stopped functioning. Hey, their environment makes me need a nap and Advil, right?
And vice versa, most likely.
Right. My way of doing it is going to literally make their brains explode.
They're going to go to sleep too.
Right. Yeah. For totally other reasons, right? My way of doing it, and I've gotten that pushback. I did some contract work when I lived in the Boston area for a publishing company. And, it was one of those standard workplace floor plans where everybody's in their little beige cube. And I found it very, very difficult to be okay. And this is way before I understood my neurodiversity, let alone my sensory issues. And there was this teeny tiny little empty, emphasis on empty, no one using it office. And I said, could I please sometimes go in there? No, that's for management. right? Like,
Oh yeah.
no one's using it. People are going to think you're special. Like, why does John Murray get to use the office? And I'm like, okay, so if other people would like to use the office, I'm not asking for ownership. I'm happy to schedule it. We have calendaring, right? For like the
Yeah.
uh, business rooms where you gather. What do you call that? You know,
Conference rooms. Yeah.
thank you. My
Yeah.
brain wouldn't produce words. We do scheduling for the conference rooms. We could schedule this room. We have the ability, right?
Yeah.
But no, because it was hierarchical. You can only have a closed private space if you are important enough. And I think this is one of the things that we bump into, this way of thinking that needs everybody to stay in their appropriate hierarchy space, right? If you were high enough in the company, you can have any damn thing you want. And very little is going to be said about it. The lower you are on that chain, the more you have to go into prove it to me. Where's the cost benefit analysis? You know, if you really need all of that, maybe you shouldn't work here, kind of stuff.
I feel like it's like almost exactly, I hope I put that, I feel like that story has to be in the book, but like it's like almost exact same situation I came up across with like the accommodations I was looking for, which was either, you know, working in a quiet space on my own or at least sitting by the window, was like, oh no, those window seats and those offices are for management. You know, and we wouldn't be fair to give you special treatment. It was literally the exact same phrase. And then it was like, oh well, you know, if you can't handle all these things because everyone else can handle this, maybe you shouldn't work here. You know, it's like, wow. It is like, you know, they put it on the employee and they make the employee the problem instead of flexing the systems and realizing, hey, you know, what I got, this is the line that got me was the HR director said, well, oh gosh, my brain just went blank. Hang on. Oh my gosh, I don't know why did that happen.
Happens to me all the time. I couldn't remember conference
I know.
room.
I was like, oh my gosh, I know. It's like, well, it was. Oh, I remember. She said, you know, it was the same thing. Like, if we give you that, everyone's gonna ask for it because you know it was like everybody's gonna ask for that. And to me, like in my brain went like, well, if everyone hates the way your system is right now, your system is sucks. Your system's broken. Like, change the system. Like, if everyone wants what I'm asking for, let's just do it so everyone can have what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I think the other piece of this, and it's something that I have people in my life that I love and respect, but this is a place where we don't necessarily agree with each other. Work ethic. The idea that I would like to be comfortable, maybe even enjoy my job, is a lack of work ethic. And we hear this being thrown at folks younger than me, for sure, right? The folks emerging from high school or college and into the workplace, they would like to have a balance of work and the rest of their life. They would like to have flexible time in and out of the office, because somewhere along the line, we made the quote unquote mistake of letting people know if you design your own life, you're better, right? Who knew? If you're allowed to take ownership of your person, your body, your being, and make choices that benefit you, you are better. When we bring that into the workplace, no one is really going to argue with you if you're talking about that in terms of a vacation, right? I am going to design a vacation and I'm going to put up with anything that I'm given. If there's like vomit on the bed when I walk in the hotel room, I'm going to deal with it because evidently they intended the vomit to be there, right? Like, no one would ask you to put up with things that are that deeply uncomfortable on vacation or in your own home. But work is this special space where, in order to be honorable, valuable, operate with dignity, all of those things, you have to be willing to be deeply uncomfortable. Deeply uncomfortable is the high value state in work. That is your work ethic, right? People who work way too many hours, we honor and value them. We give them awards, we praise them, we promote them because they are willing to put their own well-being at risk for the non-living creature that is the company. And those who are not willing to do that are diminished, demeaned, demoted, fired. Now, I own my own business. I have hired people, and I do ask for a certain amount of commitment. If our agreement is you do this work and I pay you this much money, let's honor our agreements. Now, I do need to make sure you're able to do the work, right? So if you need to do work on a computer and I don't provide you with a computer, it's kind of on me. You're not doing your job, right? And that's where accommodations come in, I think, for you and me. It's a tool for success, not a privilege. It's not a privilege to need quiet when I work. It's a necessity for productivity, right? It's not a privilege for you to recognize there is a world outside the office, therefore need access to a window. It is a necessity of calm, safety, and productivity. But we actually know this, which is why the managers get to sit there. We actually know this. We just only believe you can be comfortable while you have work ethic if you make enough money, if you have high enough status. And I think for neurodivergent people, especially us autistic folks, that breaks our brain spectacularly. I think depending on how we're wired, we're either very locked into the system because we learned the rule, don't ask me to change the, like, I've learned the rule, I stay in the rule, don't talk to me, right? That is definitely an autistic identity that I value and I love you and let's work together, right? But many of us, especially if we're multi-divergent, those hierarchies, those ways that work is designed right now, we don't get it. It doesn't look like it works for anyone. And we don't know why people are so devoted to it. Is that your experience as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I believe honestly that neurodivergent people are basically the canaries in the coal mine in this whole work situation. It's like things that are bothering and inhibiting and slowing down productivity and creativity in the workforce in general are keeping us out of the workforce or making us less productive than we could be. And neurodivergent people are brilliantly, amazingly creative humans. A lot of the time, like, you know, in their own ways, if we're nurtured. Some of us aren't, you know, nurtured and able to focus on our strengths for various reasons, capitalism. But, you know, but when we're able to like really focus on our passions, we often are specialists, especially like being autistic. I am not well-rounded in my skill sets. I am either an expert in this really specific niche thing, or I'm terrible at something. There's like no in between. I don't have a lot of gray. I'm like either really good at it or I suck at it. That's it. Like, and so the problem for me is when people expect me to be exceptional at everything at the same level, which that's been a problem for me since I was in elementary school and on up, and like people not having compassion for the fact that, yeah, I've got some really kind of cool skills, like, and now I understand neurodivergence has a lot to do with that. But also there's like weaknesses, and I have to have support for those and for the ways I struggle, so that or like to have someone take away some of the things that like are struggles for me, like taking proofreading off of my plate, things like that, just like so that I'm not held back by this thing stressing me out, that I can do the thing I'm good at and do the thing that makes me a valuable team member. Because it's like in that workplace that wouldn't give me the accommodations I needed. Like I was doing a task that's far below my skill level and was barely able to hold on to it because my health was falling apart so quickly, and I was like literally wasting away. I'm probably on my way to disability, like unemployment situation, if I wouldn't have got out of there, because it's like the environment was making me so ill. um, and so it's like, I wasn't trying to be difficult. I wasn't asking for special treatment. I was really, really freaking sick. And I wanted to be able to do this job that was honestly beneath me that I couldn't do without a little bit of help. And, in hindsight, I'm glad I left, because an environment that was that toxic, they weren't going to be willing to change. And so it forced me to go find something better, and gave me hope, because I didn't have a lot of hope when I was diagnosed. I was a really bad state because everything felt so hopeless. It's like, what am I going to do? Like, and finding an organization right after that was inclusive and got it. And when I said, hey, like, this is what I need, and they're like, oh, we've never done that before. Instead of saying that's not how we do things, they said, how? Okay, tell us how to make this happen, because we've never done this before. So it's like, oh, how will you work remotely? We know, what is it like to have a remote employee? And so like I started as the first remote employee, and then by the time I left the organization, even like right before COVID, our entire team was remote, which was really good right before COVID. Right, our entire team
Yes,
was
it
already
was.
remote. The fall of September 2020, because I was the first work remote employee because I needed disability accommodation. Eventually, everyone in the team started working remote. We sold the physical office in September of 2019. And then in March of 2020, like, less than 6 months later, the pandemic hit, and we would have been paying rent on an office we couldn't use. And if we wouldn't have known how to be remote already, like we wouldn't have been able to continue operating as a team. So being inclusive really did, in real time, I got to see it help the entire organization. And then in the pandemic, it was really obvious how this move helped, because that was a lot of what we were doing, is teaching other organizations how to work remotely, because they didn't know how, and we had been doing it forever. So it was like, that's what we're teaching our clients now. It's like a thing we didn't think we'd be teaching, because it became necessary to work remote. And so like then, like a lot of people who like either had disabilities, couldn't drive, or like had struggles being in the office, were able to like get employment again when we could work through Zoom and all these things like we're doing right now, which is amazing. And so like the world had this shift because of that, the tragedy that happened with the pandemic. Like we had to, I think the big thing was, because it had that shift to Zoom and virtual and all these platforms, like before, it was very like, leave your home at home when you come to work. But now you have to have that human aspect, because like people's cats are popping in, their kids are popping in, you're in the home, like funny things are happening. People are going through loss, so you're like starting to have to be like really faced with it. Like you have to have compassion for people like who aren't going to be their best when they've just lost a loved one, or you're losing people. So like people were forced to be a bit more compassionate, and a lot of the whole be a robot at work, which is very cruel and not realistic, and thinking everyone has to be 120% productive every day, which is not possible. Like thinking that, to people's productivity goes up and down day to day depending on what's going on in their lives and how they're feeling. Like that was a big change that I think we needed. Which I think I would have totally off track from the original question.
I'm happy. So I'm almost always talking in these YouTube videos with another neurodivergent person. And it's always fun to go back and watch the very serpentine thread of how we get from beginning to end.
It's not linear. It's like poof, popcorn everywhere.
Yes, which for those of you who are autistic and very, very much need a linear approach, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the ADHD takes over. I honestly, as an autistic ADHDer, like I've been talking to other autistic ADHDers, and it depends on who you ask, but like I am one that feels like being autistic is much less of an inconvenience on my life than my ADHD, which is like the autism like gives me all of this structure and like planning, and the ADHD is like this toddler that comes around and just like knocks all my blocks over all the time. Like I'm trying to do something, and ADHD is like, I'm gonna distract you. I'm gonna make a mess of everything. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I have a number of different ways of describing my brain, and one of them is siblings. There's the autistic sibling who would like to be on the couch near the fireplace with a book and a blanket and a cup of tea. And
Yeah.
please don't ask me to move ever. And then my ADHD is the rambunctious younger sibling who has all of the energy, just wants to go outside, spills my cup of tea, loses my page in my book, blocks the fireplace, right? Like just like won't leave me alone until I get up off the couch. And there's this constant, and they love each other dearly, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
And they will, you know, like any siblings, they will slay whoever like picks on the other one. But yeah, it's this constant come play with me, no leave me alone in my brain all the time,
Oh yeah.
unless I'm on a topic like we are today that makes both of those siblings very happy.
Yes, that's what you're trying to do, is feed the ADHD autism wolf at the same time. It's like, I need dopamine, but not too much.
But not too much, right? Like I love all the noise and the lights and the stuff like that for 5 minutes, and then I'm going home, right? Like, oh my gosh, this was so much
only
fun.
if I'm
Bye.
in control of it.
Right.
Only if I control it.
Yeah. We are bumping up against the hour mark, and
Oh, are we really?
we are. It went so incredibly fast, and I want to talk to you
It
more.
did.
So I hope you'll come back. You know,
Yeah.
folks are just getting a little bit of an idea of the gold mine that your book is. I hit myself in the face. I'm dyspraxic. I don't know where my
That's
body
so
is in space.
relatable.
Right.
So
So
yeah.
get the book, all of the places you can get books, and we're gonna have Lyric's socials. Lyric, one thing I want to say right here at the end, if people have made it this far, and if you have, you're an amazing human. You have a Substack.
I do.
If people aren't familiar with Substack, it's a writer's platform, and there are free ways to get all the brilliant things that Lyric says. There are minimal joining spaces, and then there are like super supporter ways of doing it. I would highly recommend, because this is another place where you're going to get really rich, in-depth content from Lyric. I find it exceptionally valuable and love it, but you are also in other places online, and so we're going to make sure that those links are there. So get the book, join Substack, become a supporter.
Thank you.
Lyric, please come back and talk to me.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me on today. I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for info dumping with me about the workplace things, you know, because it's like, it's I was saying, and I've said many times, I'd love for this not to be a necessity. Like, I want to work myself out of a job, and then I'm just gonna go do painting and be an author and just write, like, you know. But until then, like, I'm gonna keep talking about how all the things are broken and we need to fix them, because my autistic brain fixates on a problem and cannot let the problem go until it's solved. And so until the problems of all of our broken workplaces are solved, I can't let it go. So the more people who read the book, the closer we get to solving that problem, hopefully. Fingers
Read
crossed.
the book, do the thing, let Lyric go take a break. Be kind, read the book.
I can't stop. I literally can't stop.
Yeah, I'm aware. I had a I am hypermobile, which is a connective tissue disorder.
Yeah,
that
same.
means my joints don't stay where they belong. My organs don't. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I went to get a pain shot not too long before I was here with you. And
wow.
like, they're like trying to do the intake stuff. And I'm literally writing emails on my phone. Right? I don't ever stop working. I just don't. I don't. It's like, but if I don't answer the email, what if something happened, especially with my memory, right? I might forget, and then 45 other emails are going to come in and it'll be lost in the abyss that is my inbox. So I'm in my little hospital socks and my work emails. So yeah, read the book so Lyric and I can take a vacation.
Yes. Thank
All
you,
right, my friend,
God.
thank you so much. We will be in touch soon. I appreciate you.
Bye.